people can still get here late, but it's okay. All right. So I think there we go. Oh, I see 65 eyeballs. There we go. That little thing right there. Okay. So let's start. So welcome to our conversation about Netflix's Unorthodox. I'm Allison Joseph, as you probably know. This is Nechama Schweitzer. She is a Project Makom member now for over 3 years, Nechama. Am I right? Does that sound?
Almost 3 years.
Almost 3 years. And I mean, this show has gotten obviously a lot of attention, and it certainly sparked a lot of conversation amongst our Project Makom group. I never know who to look to. Do I look in the camera? Do I look at you, Nechama? It's so confusing. And you know, I feel like there's been sort of different responses. There's been the response of, you know, this is just all libel and lies against the Hasidic community. And then there's been the response that, you know, this is totally true. And, you know, and I think we're trying to take some sort of a middle of the road approach. My goal tonight is to offend everyone by the time we're done, from both sides. Everyone laugh. I can't see people laughing. Nechama, you should laugh. Okay, there's a joke. No, what I'm hoping that we can do is, what I think is special about Nechama being here to have this conversation with me is that Nechama has seen both worlds. So let's just sort of like do an introduction. There are lots of happy Hasidim whose lives look nothing like Unorthodox. In fact, there's even people in Project Makom who sent me messages, you know, this is ridiculous, this is over the top, I grew up in Williamsburg, this is nothing like this. These are people that came from healthy, happy families and situations. So even they could have been neighbors with Deborah Feldman, and this looks nothing like the world that they're from. Then there's people who have left completely. They experienced negativity, they left completely. And I think people in the frum community, especially maybe even more in the chasidish world, might say, how could we trust what they're saying? These people left, so they're just here to throw, you know, throw everyone under the bus and throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I think what we offer here at Project Makom is sort of something in between, where Nechama has seen the bad, and Nechama has been blessed now to see so much good. And again, what we're trying to accomplish here tonight is not to say what the experiences we're saying is everyone's experiences, either the bad or the healing, but rather to show someone that's sort of seen both sides and sort of how they approached what they saw. My feeling about, I guess, something like this that's so popular, I don't know, it was like the 5th or 6th most watched, you know, thing on Netflix for a certain amount of time, is what do we do to make things better? I'm a big problem solver, and that's just something that I, you know, can't help but wonder, like, if we do see problems here, how can we make them better? So Nechama, let's just jump in right now. You know, one of the other reasons that I chose you, besides the fact that you're so eloquent and have seen both sides, is that parts of your story are similar to Esti's. Despite the fact that we see your hair now, you were married at one point, so you are a woman that lived in the Chasidish community and got divorced in the Chasidish community and went off the derech from the Chasidish community. So can you tell us a little about where you grew up and what type of Hasidic sect you grew up in, so we can understand a little bit of your similarities and differences to Satmar Williamsburg?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Thanks, Allison, for doing this. So I grew up in Brooklyn in Borough Park. I am the second of 12 kids. I did not grow up Satmar. I grew up Belz. And to differentiate, to help you understand the differences between Satmar and Belz, I'm not like an expert in every single Hasidus or even in Belz. I can just say that there are, just between every sect in Hasidus, there are just different traditions. There's like some slight differences between dress codes, especially for men, some for women, especially for the women who are married, and hair covering.
Okay. And can you tell us a little bit about what your Jewish experience was like growing up? And then sort of, I guess, take us to the point that you felt like it was time for you to leave where you came from.
So I went to, I had a pretty uneventful childhood. And my teens were also pretty uneventful, very typical. I mean, typical for my world, probably not typical for a lot of you. But I can't say like there was any major trauma that happened in my life or anything specifically that like pushed me over the edge. I went to an all girls Jewish Hasidic high school. When I was like in 11th and 12th grade, that's when I have the earliest memories of finding myself having, or just remembering having different aspirations than the rest of my classmates. Like in 11th or 12th grades, it's very common, and it's happened, you know, that was what was happening around me, was that my friends were all talking about getting married, having kids, starting a family. And we were being taught that, like in 11th and 12th grades, a lot of our curriculum is about getting married, having kids, the values of being a Jewish woman, a Jewish housewoman, I guess, a husband to your wife,
a wife to your
husband. And so when my friends all like embraced that and were excited about that, I did not feel that. From high school, I can remember just wanting to get my degree in special ed. I had a passion for special ed. I wanted to work in that field. I did not want to get married. I did not want to have kids. I wanted to go to college. I wanted to have a career. I wanted to live on my own, be independent. And these are all ideas that I don't know where I picked them up, because it's not like I was on the internet. I was not watching movies. I didn't see this anywhere. So I can only say that this was an innate desire that I had. And that's where I started differentiating and just being different from my classmates. And so at that point, I kind of just started filtering a lot of what I was saying and thinking. And so everything I was saying, I had to like double, you know, I had to think it again and think like, oh, is this something I can say? So there was a lot of like starting to live a double life and kind of just being very conscious with my thoughts and my spoken words of, oh, is this something I can say and share, or is this just something that I have to keep inside of me? There was a lot of, I think the biggest thing for me was that I was living a double life, and I had to pretend to like, oh yeah, when people around me were getting engaged and getting married and having kids, I had to just like smile and say, oh yeah, one day I'll do this. And when really inside, I had no desire for that.
Was there a place like, was there like even a single soul that you felt like you could be honest with, or the messaging was that you felt like you had to just sort of put on a show to the outside? Like, meaning, do you ever remember sort of like testing the limit of, am I allowed to say this out loud and get in trouble for that? Or
I did share it with other friends. I remember like saying to friends, I would kind of put like a timeline on my career or these like interesting ideas. I'd be like, oh, maybe when I'm like 19 or 20, I'll get married, which I know like saying now it sounds like so bizarre, because like that's not even when people start getting married. But, you know, from where I was coming from, kids were like, girls were getting engaged when they were 18. By 19, they were like married, expecting their first child, who knows what. So yeah, I remember sharing it with friends. I remember getting this reaction of like, you're very strange. I remember sharing it with my siblings, and just like, I think a lot of people, I don't know if a lot, I didn't share it with a lot, but my siblings, a lot of them thought I was very strange and very different. And where did I get these ideas from? And I'm just like, I was weird. Even though I was a very good kid, I was very well behaved. I was never rebellious in any way, shape, or form. And I was very compliant, and I did what I had to do, and I played the part for a very long time.
So can you like sort of take us through as you got older? So you had these plans, and then what about college? What about marriage?
So I did go to college. I have to give my parents credit for that, because they saw this passion in me that I wanted to be in the special ed field, and they actually encouraged me to go to college, which is very unusual. So I give them thanks to that. So I did go to college. I actually started in high school already, taking some exams to get like some college credits. And just to give you like a background of like what that looked like for me, like I was in high school in 12th grade, and we were being taught like the dangers of college, of why you should not go to college, and how like in college you will have professors who are not Jewish and put these non-Jewish ideas in your head, and then your whole life will start unraveling. And so I'm listening to this, and at the same time, I'm actually taking college exams. we didn't do like any SAT preps, or like, I know like now I know that like in high school kids are, you know, starting to put together their stuff for college applications. Like none of that was going on. None of that was happening. So I was taking college exams in high school secretly. I could not tell anybody because I think my school would have kicked me out if they knew that that was going on. I graduated high school. I started working right away and then went on to get my master's, which I loved. When I was in college, like for the first time in my education, I felt like I was alive. I felt like I was actually learning something important, and not just important, but something like interesting. It was a very eye-opening experience for me. And then when I think it was when I was 19, I had my first bout of depression. And I saw a doctor, and I was put on medication, and I started therapy and treatment. I had developed like an eating disorder at that point as well. And then like when I was about 20 was when this shidduch came up. And also, like, just to give you a mind frame, like I was at this point when this shidduch came up, I was like barely stable on my meds. My eating was like also like really like barely stable. But nobody knew that I was struggling with this. Everything was undercover. There's not a lot of mental health discussion or awareness at all. So this was something that I was doing like on my own. I did not have like, my parents weren't really aware of what was going on. My community didn't know. I had one or two close friends who actually knew that I was struggling and were helping me through this time frame. But when I was about 20, which just FYI is like very old for a girl to not be married. So when I was 20 and this shidduch came up, like in my mind, there was no reason for me to say no. And like my whole education, my whole life, I was taught you were born to be a wife and a mother and raise Jewish children and build another Jewish home. And so for me to like, there was no reason in my mind to say no. Although I do have to say that I did talk to my rabbi and say, like, I don't want to do this. Like, this was before I got engaged. This was like throughout my engagement. I had like multiple conversations with my rabbi and said, I don't want to get married. I don't want to have kids. Like, and I also told him about like my depression and my meds and you know, the response that I got was that you're not really depressed. You don't really need your meds. You'll see, you'll get married, you'll be happy, you'll want to be married, you'll want to have kids. And so like, also like, just to give you a little backstory, like understanding behind that, I was taught, like I was raised, whatever your rabbi says, whatever anybody older than you says, you don't contradict. You do what they say. And also like we were taught that like whatever a rabbi says, like you can't go wrong. It's like God's word or something. So this rabbi is telling me this and I'm like, okay, I guess he's right. I guess this is what I have to do. So under his guidance, I went off my meds. Okay, first I got engaged. And so my rabbi had like figured out for us to make us a longer engagement. So I have time to wean off my meds. And so that happened. And I went off my meds. And so by the time I got married, I was already on a downward spiral, like just mentally and psychologically and emotionally. And I kept repeating this to to a lot of people of like, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want to get married. I don't want to have kids. And I just kept being told, you'll see, you'll be happy, you'll be fine. Yeah. Allison, what do you want to jump in here?
No, this is very interesting. So, so I guess I think people are curious to find out now. Maybe we can start to weave your story and Unorthodox together a little bit up till this point before you go off the derech. So let's talk about up until this point of Esty having questions or being the weirdo. I think that's something that's sort of like she was strange. It sounds like you were also sort of strange. What up until this point of her journey and your journey feels authentic from what you watched?
for me, when I watched it, that look on Este's face, and I have to give it to this actress. I don't know her name. I'm sorry, but she's a phenomenal actress. Because when I watched Unorthodox and I saw that look of confusion and conflict and struggle on Este's face, like that was me, and that felt like extremely authentic, and that like it was very hard for me to like see that, because that was like such a real reflection of what I was going through back then, where I was so confused and so conflicted with what I was being told to do, what I really wanted to do, and trying to make this what I was being told the truth for me, when it never felt right for me. It never sat well with me at all. So that was very real for me.
What about the basho, the meeting where the boy and the girl meet for the first time, and if all goes well, they're engaged by the end of the evening?
So I think like the awkwardness of that conversation, like watching it like as a spectator, for me, like that felt real as well. I don't remember exactly how her basho went and how many she had until she got engaged. But when I got engaged, I had 2 bashos, and technically, like I was told that after. Before I even was allowed to have a second basho, I was told by the shadchan that, well, she can only have a second basho if like right after the basho she says yes and she's ready to get engaged. And so like I know my parents didn't agree with that, and I give them credit for doing that. They said that like, no, she needs her time. You have to give her. You can't pressure her like that. But in reality, what ended up happening was like after the second basho, I know his dad, I mean, everyone is there, right? Like in the other room, but like when the basho was over, we came out of the room or meeting, whatever you want to call it. So his dad was like, so new, you ready? Can we have l'chaim? And I was like put so off guard, and like I'm in front of this whole audiences again of like men who like, this is how I was raised, that like you just do whatever people tell you, like you don't stand up and contradict. So like in practice, I didn't I was put on the spot and I said yes, but that wasn't like a real, I can't say like that was like a real choice for me, because like I was given no chance to like process what happened. And there were like a couple of things that came up that like bothered me during like the actual basho, but I had no time to like process that with anyone. I also know, like in hindsight, anybody who I would have talked to about the things that were bothering me would have been like, "Nah, that's okay. You'll see. You'll work it out. That's not a reason to say no." So yeah, that was my basho experience.
How about kala classes? So for this part, Nechama and I discussed beforehand that this is obviously a very private, thing to discuss intimate topics. So I've actually been discussing this with other Project Makom members as well. So, we're trying to have a balance here of sharing, accurate experiences while at the same time maintaining people's dignity. So whatever you feel comfortable sharing with, the audience that seemed authentic or not authentic to you, and then I'll fill in what we heard from other Project Makom members. Let me say again, for anyone that joined in the middle of this, what we're really here to do is sort of talk about, individual experiences. There's a whole host of people in the chasidish world whose lives look nothing like anything on Unorthodox. There's even members of Project Makom who said that it seems so much more extreme and nothing they can even recognize a caricature. But the reason that I think it's important to hear from people who have now discovered a positivity and observance talk about what went wrong is that I think we really need to validate these experiences. We can't do it's all lies and libel. If people that are here ready trying to reclaim and who have reclaimed a connection to Judaism, if they're saying they went through this, we can't just shush them. We can't just silence their voice. We need to really understand, even if they're the most extreme cases, or if the entire, series didn't depict one exact life, it's sort of pieces here or there. It's important to understand what's going wrong in my mind so that we can make it right. This series already happened. We, didn't have a choice for it to be produced or not. It happened. So now that it's here, what do we do with it? So with that, Nechama, if you can share with us, what, if, in the college classes seemed realistic?
I mean, a lot of it seemed very realistic. I think like what stood out for me most was like the lack of education and knowledge on Estee's part of like her own anatomy and what's going on. Again, I think like what you said also, like in extreme cases, it would probably look like that. And then you have like people who have varied experiences, on either end of the spectrum of what's going on. But what happens in school, there's no like when kids go through puberty and when girls start getting their periods, and there's no discussion in school about that. There's no like biology classes about that. So it's like, I mean, a girl's mom will sit down with her and like whatever your mom tells you about what happens in your body, that's what you know. And I mean, I can tell you like from stories that, I mean, from my own personal experiences and just like from hearing from what friends say, like some girls are told nothing and they just like get their first period and they think they're dying and they're bleeding out, which is, the most extreme cases. Then you have people who just like know that they bleed once a month. Like there's no connection to like your cycle and to like your pregnancy and having kids and all of that. And then there are people who can know it all because their mom sat down with them and gave them an entire biology class. But there's nothing in school that actually focuses on teaching girls what's going on in their bodies. So I think it's very typical that you can find girls that will, at 18, not know what's going on with them.
So in terms of what we heard from other Project Makom members, there was a range of people saying this was spot on accurate, to some of them saying that there was an acknowledgement that this act is supposed to be a pleasurable one, but not really giving any information about how to, make it that way. So that was sort of the feedback that I got. But again, everyone, stressed that these are, what we saw there was sort of the most extreme and, negative way that this could come about. Now let's move on to the wedding. Did the wedding seem authentic to you or accurate or?
Okay, so what struck me right away was her hairstyle, Estee's hairstyle, like her wearing her hair up like that. Like to me, I've never seen that in that extreme circumstances in any Hasidic wedding. So that to me was like right away something that struck me as not authentic. Mm-hmm. Other than that, I think like most of it were. I think a lot of streimels were not fitted well. If you care about that, and the payas weren't all that great. But I think overall that was pretty accurate.
I know people are going to want to hear what are some of the inaccuracies that you noticed along the way in Unorthodox. The Yiddish.
That the Yiddish was bad. The accent was like really not good. I was actually so surprised with that. So that struck me right away. There was this scene in like one of the first episodes where like there were a lot of women, a group of women like congregating in a lobby or like right outside this building, and then like a random black guy walks in. Like to me, that was so strange. I don't know why they put that in over there.
You said you didn't like how she was dressed when she left.
Yeah. So that was a big discrepancy for me, that like before she was married, all the scenes she was dressed pretty well and put together. And then the scene where she leaves, she was dressed so, I don't know how to say it. Like she was not dressed well at all. So I don't understand what they did over there. They might have, I don't know.
I mean, one thing that struck me, and again, as an outsider, and again, I think sort of interesting thing, and I think that there's a gap in my knowledge in terms of the Hasidim that I know. I either know Hasidim that are more modern, or I know Hasidim that went through all sorts of trauma and challenging experiences. I have a gap in my knowledge of the happy ones that are tucked away somewhere. That's something I would like to correct at some point. If you're on Facebook right now, you're not tucked away enough. I want to talk to someone who's not on Facebook. But one thing that I noticed at the beginning was that the opening seemed so dour. It just seemed like serious, somber music, and everything is so dark. But I asked you this, and you felt like the dourness that is depicted there, that felt like your life. This was.
I mean, I was very unhappy. It was, I mean, like I said before, like from when I was like, I must have been like 17 or 18, I really started realizing that this was not the life I wanted to live. And I think that like I just felt stuck, and I didn't have happiness in my life. But like you said, there are people who live there who are happy. People who are open to the outside world, who choose to stay and be Hasidish and live in the Hasidic community. And they're okay. So I think it really depends on like who you ask and whose experiences, who's sharing their experience. But yeah, for me, I was not happy over there.
What about the Yenta mother-in-law? I know that, there are mother-in-laws and there are Yentas. It seemed like really personal stuff that he was telling his mother and his family, which I was like, that can't be real. But you had a different opinion when we spoke about this.
Yeah, I was not shocked that came up at all. I think that like people can be yentas and people can be in each other's business. There's maybe like, not respect for boundaries and what do we discuss and what do we not talk about. I think there's also like, part of growing up is that I'm going to talk in I because I'm talking about my experiences, but very often I found that like I grow up, but like I'm still expected to like answer to a lot of people. And so like having my own independence and understanding that like I have my own desires and I can actually own them and live by them and not have to answer to everybody else, like that's a concept that not everybody has. So it didn't shock me.
That's upsetting. What about, and again, I'm going to fill this in with other Mako members' experiences, anything about the intimate life between the husband and the wife that you think could be, for people that haven't watched it all, we have a husband and wife that were dressed while they were intimate with each other, literally, nothing but the act itself, no kissing, no hugging. Do you think that that's, I don't know how much you want to share here, but I can also share other Project Makom members, feedback here or anything you would.
I think you should share like from Makom because like, again, like I have my experiences, like some of it was true for me. Like some of it was similar to what I went through and some of it was not. Again, none of it was like surprising to me that like this could be happening. Like I hope it's not happening in everybody's house.
Yeah.
But I think you can talk better to the range of what.
So again, we had from the, this is crazy extreme, this would never happen, to in the most extreme places, you will find people that are, dressed or only wearing their top, during sex. And some, that, no kissing is even talked about, nothing before the act itself. It's really just kind of go straight to it. So, and again, I think these are the most extreme cases. And I think, again, the people that live through this are the ones that are looking for someplace else. The ones that are happy in their world have not come to Project Makom. They have not sought another path. So I have to imagine that there is a direct correlation between, some of the extreme things that were depicted in Unorthodox and people not wanting to be a part of that. I don't know if anyone has percentages, but even, our crew that has a lot of gripes with where they came from and is not afraid to say their real feelings, said that they believe that, this is still the minority. Some thought the lack of kissing is weird. They would have figured out kissing after a certain amount of time. But someone wrote to me actually and said that the engagement and the marriage reminds me of my experience, a lot. So, it's heartbreaking where this, what we would want to say would be the lies of Hollywood or exaggerations. And again, does every single thing happen to one person? I think that is probably more than what happens to one person. This is not any one person's life, but what I'll say is that from the people that told me, oh, this is, I grew up in Williamsburg, this is such an exaggeration, no one's like this, to the people that told me, I was triggered watching this, watching these scenes. I had to turn it off because it was so upsetting, or it brought me back. The Seder is something that some members spoke a lot about. I'm not sure if that was particularly like a trigger for you, but by Pesach, we talk about the merit that we were saved in, that that we talk about that Hashem saved us in 4 ways, that it was all about salvation, Yeshua. And what it was focused on in their homes was who didn't get saved. If you don't follow this rule, this rule, this rule, those are the ones that Hashem doesn't save. So sort of this control and manipulation with fear and terror. Actually, I want to get to that a little bit now too, in terms of you saying there wasn't like a specific trauma that you grew up with. I would like to talk about your Jewish education around just mitzvos, around God, around asking questions. There's certain types of abuse where someone gets smacked around, and then there's these more like silent types of abuses where it's just sort of like, I don't know, the way of life is just a certain sadness or seriousness or lack of joy or terror. So could you speak to sort of your Jewish experience and your experience about God and mitzvos?
Yeah. So, I mean, let me start by saying that, like, when I left the Hasidic community and I left Judaism, I left because, like, I hated being Jewish. And I think, like, Allison, I, like, shared with you this many times. Like, my biggest thing was what's so good about being Jewish? Like, why do I want to be Jewish? We're just a nation that gets persecuted over and over. And, like, my life is not even good because I'm Jewish. So, like, what's this whole big deal about us being Jewish? And I think that, like, when I met Allison and when I met people in Project Makom, was like, that was the biggest shift that happened for me. But I guess you can ask me that soon. So I'll go back to how I, growing up. For me, like, being Jewish, like, I always feel persecuted. Like, for me as a woman, like, wearing a skirt and, like, okay, so I wore stockings growing up because, like, that was the Hasidic thing. But when I was just like that, I kind of felt like I was making myself a target to, like, anti-Semitism, and to, like, the Holocaust for me was like was always in the back of my mind. Like, I'm like always waiting for the Holocaust to happen again. In terms of, like, my connection to Judaism and God, like, I think that, like, a lot of what I was told and what you said about, like, all the negative stuff that will happen to us if we don't do the right thing was very much highlighted. Everything was either about, like, going to heaven or hell. Everything was about, like, the punishments, or, like, how your soul is going to suffer, and how after you die, you're going to go to hell. There were a lot. I think, like, as a woman, when it comes to tznius, it was like, that was like the place where they would just, like, drill us and terrorize us. I mean, the stories that I was told, I remember a teacher or my principal, I don't remember who, giving us a story of, like, somebody after they died, like, they didn't dress tznius, so, like, they had their not tzniistic dress dipped in, like, scalding hot water and then draped over their body, like, several times over and over. I remember, like, my high school principal saying this story about, like, this woman who didn't shave her head after she was married and then got this, like, growth on her face. And, like, my principal was like, well, and I think the reason why she got this growth on her face was maybe because she didn't shave her head. So, like, all these, like, stories and examples, yeah, that doesn't, like, give you a very good feeling about, like, being Jewish and doing what, is meant to do in Judaism. I don't know.
So I can say sort of the perspective that, so many of you, and my son gets FaceTime calls constantly. Okay, I just shut that off. We're all on the same account, and I need to get us on different accounts. So many Mako members have shared, and it's so horrifying. And I'm trying to, I want to figure out how do we re-educate people, and I'm trying to make this known so that we can figure out a way to fix this. The suffering that they experienced, the different forms of abuse that they experienced, was a punishment for the sins that they did. That it's so direct, and this is so against Jewish thought. We believe that tzaddikim, that righteous people, have bad things happening to us. That even Moses couldn't answer why. Why? I told my husband to keep the kids out of the room, but I did not tell them to keep FaceTime off. So, oops. Even Moshe Rabbeinu could understand that tzaddikim could have bad things happen to them. And yet it's in some places has become so simplified that do something bad and get your punishment. But not only that, not only is it so simple with reward and punishment, what so many members have come to us saying is that they believe that Hashem is sitting there like laughing in delight as they're suffering. And I remember the first Shabbat home that you were on, Nechama, like we were trying to even talk about, could God be anything but this sort of like monster, this, monster that, sort of wanted to punish you and repay all the bad that you did. And I remember feeling so like hopeless, like how will we get this message through? But maybe now let's start to talk a little bit about the healing, like, because we've done a lot now of setting up sort of what you guys have went through, what brought you here. And by the way, it was never my idea that people should like want to leave where they come from. What I think is actually far better is, why don't we find ways to keep the original place in a better state so that people don't feel the need to have to go elsewhere to be happy where they are. But, since you did experience these negative experiences, now let's start to talk about the healing. How did your story take a different trajectory than Esti's? By the end, Esti rejects her husband. She rejects her life. She seems pretty clear that she's done with where she came from. She's a free woman living in Berlin now, and sort of her whole past has been thrown away. And you had a different turn of events in your life.
I did. I mean, some of it was the same. I mean, I was done being married. I was done being in the chasidish community. But when I left the chasidish community, and I stayed in Brooklyn. I didn't go to Berlin or any far-fetched place. I always wanted to stay connected to my Judaism. I always had a lot of questions about God and about being Jewish and what my purpose in this world is, and I don't know, just a lot of just questions I had. And when I left the Hasidic community, I was like completely alone. My family had rejected me. Like I wasn't allowed to come home because of the way I started dressing. And I didn't have anybody. And I remember just like sitting in my apartment on Friday night and watching TV. And I remember feeling like, this is not what I want my life to be like. I don't want to just like watch TV every single Shabbat, like 24/7. Like I want something bigger. I want something more. I didn't have where to turn to until I was told about Allison and Project Makom. So I think like that was where my life took a different turn, and I found Makom, and through Makom I found like this whole new Judaism that like I never knew existed, and I found beauty and joy in life, in Judaism, and being Jewish and being like true to who I am as a Jew. I found like a lot of healing and strength just like from my soul. Like I had a lot of healing to do, like just like mentally and psychologically and emotionally. Like I had to go through, all of that healing. But after that, like there was still a void in my life where, the part of me who's a Jew for me, I feel like, I think I've told you this many times, Allison, like I feel so strongly like if I wouldn't have taken care of that like Jewish spark in me, I would have never been as healed or like where I am today. Because that was always like, I cannot run, like I am Jewish because I'm Jewish. Like that's who I am by birth. And if I hate that part of me, then there's always a part of me I'm going to hate. So I had to heal that part. I had to like find the beauty and the joy and embrace that. And Malcolm gave me that. You gave me that, Allison.
We're so happy. Can you tell us about visiting Makom families for Shabbos? I think at the beginning, I told you like, this is real. Like there are like this community that you're visiting when you come to my house, when you go to the other hosts that, we're sending you up by. You're seeing people that are serious Jews, that are halachic, that are open-minded, that can talk about difficult conversations, that are aware about mental health, which was, I know, always like a complaint of yours that wasn't happening, where women had voices, but were also tznius simultaneously. Like, can you remember going back almost, oh my God, this child, going back almost 3 years now, what it was like to to sort of see for the first time that you could, because you were told that anyone outside of your community like wasn't so Jewish. So what it was like to see like very Jewish people that had values that you could embrace.
Yeah. I remember like the first couple of times I went to people for Shabbos, I was just like at their table with like, I must have like been there like with my mouth hanging wide open, because that's what I felt like. I was like, where have you guys been my whole life? Like, what is this life you're I feel like I just heard something. It was like something I've never witnessed before. And it was just like such, I guess, a breath of fresh air. It was beautiful. Like I have like since joining Makom, like relearned what like Shabbat is. I remember like the first few like Jewish holidays I've done. I was like, okay, this now I'm relearning Rosh Hashanah, and now I'm redoing Yom Kippur, and now I'm redoing Sukkot. And then as like the Chagim, went by, I started getting excited. I was like, oh, I can't wait to do Purim now. Like, what is this new Purim all about? And I started like redefining every single thing in Judaism, like literally everything.
What about redefining God?
Yeah, I think that took a little more time. But I mean, God went from being this like person I actually like hated for a very long time, and I was very mad at him for a very, very long time. And I think like over time, all the discussions I had with you, and that also is huge, because when I came to Makom, or I came to Allison, and I came to any of these Makom families, I started firing away questions. Like I would not shut up. And it was like anything I asked was totally fine and cool. And I was like, oh my God, I'm just like on a roll here, because growing up, I had no space to ask questions. I was not allowed to ask questions. Like all these questions would be like, what is wrong with you? Like, if you have these questions, then like, you might as well just not be Jewish, because like, how dare you? And then all of a sudden I had a place to ask questions. And then I had these like beautiful answers. And then like, I started thinking about that. And then I would come back and ask more questions. But just having that space to like ask and explore was huge for me. Yeah, I found a God who is a lot more kind and compassionate and caring than I ever thought imaginable. But again, like I also witnessed such love and kindness from people. And so like, I think that like, as I kind of like started seeing more beauty in humankind and in Judaism, then I was able to like see that in God as well.
We're going to open up to questions soon. I thought like around 45 minutes of us talking back and forth was the right time before we start to take some questions. I guess I want to just sort of end with, this is a real frustration for me and something we've discussed before, but I'd like to discuss this for the 200 plus people that are watching this right now. Your story is never told. This version of the story is never told in the news. We have so much trouble getting any media attention. We've gotten a few articles, like in literally several years of this organization. The equation of, I want to say one more thing too. Actually, I want to ask you one more thing, just to try to be a little more balanced here. We've also introduced you to Hasidim that were different than how you grew up. Hasidim that were more open, Hasidim that were more healthy. This is still not the choice for you, but can you talk a little bit about like what it's like to see some people that had a different approach and could be happy where they were?
Yeah, so I met some people who love the Hasidic lifestyle. They love the traditions, the practices. I don't know, the community connection they get there. And for whatever reason, like they choose to stay there and they are happy, and they kind of find a way to balance out, like, staying connected to the outside and the modern world and staying connected to Judaism. And I think there are like a lot of people who are like that. And they're also like a very, I'm assuming, I mean, I think Allison, you would know like numbers better than I do, but I think like there are also a lot of Hasidim who stay very traditional and not open to the outside world, who are also like, they're happy living that lifestyle as well.
Okay, no, fine. So I didn't want to say that. I'm trying to cover all of our bases of honesty and nuance and shades of gray here. Okay, fine. So to the point of the equation that we see again and again is Hasidic life is bad, leaving is good, and the protagonist sort of takes the journey. And look, this story has existed many times, so that's not to say it shouldn't be told. Of course, this story deserves to be told as well. But the number of outlets and the number of times that this version has been repeated, where Judaism is always the evil and escaping it is the good, whereas the story of rediscovering Judaism and observance and Torah and God in a healthy way, in a positive way. Why don't you think this version of the story is being told? Why do you wish this version of the story is being told?
Why I don't think it gets told. I mean, I can share like my personal opinion. I don't really know why it gets told, why it doesn't get told. I think that like a lot of people in the outside world, I mean, especially not Jewish people, have this like misconception about who we are as Jews. There's so much anti-Semitism, and I feel that like when there's a platform of like, oh, we're showing how bad the Jews are, like all the anti-Semites can pounce on us and be like, oh, hey, by the way, the reason why we hate the Jews is, hey, look at this documentary. This is why we hate them. So I think it like definitely like fuels that and gets those viewers to come, and media's media business. So they're going to do what they need to do to get their viewers and to get their money in, I guess.
Why do you wish a story where someone has the chance to rediscover Judaism in a different way, in a positive way, could be told?
I mean, I think like there are a couple of reasons why I feel that way. Like, I think like from the media's perspective, like they should be honest about what the stories that they're telling and the way they're portraying. Like there's like the unorthodox ending where like somebody doesn't like it and leaves Judaism completely. But then there are people who find beauty and joy in their faith, in their religion, and they should tell their story too. Like we deserve to have a voice there. And also just like in terms of like the truth, like you want to portray Hasidim, you want to portray Jewish lifestyle, like you should do it the right way. So that's one, I guess one of my reasons. The other one is that like there's so many people who have similar journeys to me, who want to stay connected to their faith. They want to stay connected to Judaism. And all that they see out there in the media are stories of people who leave and then just leave everything. And I think that when I left, I had no, like I told you before, like I had no one. Makom was very new. I mean, I think you're still new, but like you have grown tremendously, like in the past 2.5 years that I've known you. But I feel that like for all these people who are still stuck there, who this Hasidic lifestyle is not working for, they deserve to know that there are alternatives, and they deserve to know that like it's not an all or nothing, like the way we were raised. Because we were raised saying that like you're either gonna be like us or you might as well not be Jewish, or like just not be from it all. And that's like so unfair. I mean, for me, my biggest healing was rediscovering my Judaism and reclaiming that and finding the beauty and the joy. I feel like I got the best of both worlds. Like I have my Judaism. I love who I am as a Jew. I'm not going to say I don't have my struggles. I have a long way to go still. And then I have my whole outside life where I can like, be a professional, and I can travel, and I can, just be in the modern world.
You're literally describing why I started Jew in the city, like meaning to say that like you can have it all, that you can have the best of both worlds. And by the way, I would just jump in here. I don't only think it's anti-Semites that are sort of continuing this story. I would say a lot of people in the media, not to feed into any anti-Semitic stereotypes, but there's a lot of Jews in the media. And I think that unfortunately, they come to know the chasidish community from the most extreme, traumatic, dysfunctional situations. They have not spent the time getting to know all the happy, loving. I wanted to make this point. Even from my own experience of the chasidish world, I know that we're seeing the saddest, most extreme, most dysfunctional cases. And I have to sort of keep myself in check to not get too negative, to not get too overwhelmed. I spoke to a therapist recently who deals with Hasidish children. And she said she is getting the highest functioning Hasidish families. These are families with money. These are families that quickly notice that something's wrong with their kid. They are in tune enough to recognize that mental health is the right thing to take care of. And they're doting enough to, go to the professional. So she said she's skewed in the way of seeing the best of the community. we realize that, it's not one extreme or the other, it's somewhere in between. But unfortunately, I think so much of the media only knows the Hasidic world from the most traumatic cases, from the worst headlines that come out, really from the crooks, creeps, and extremists of our community. And so they haven't even done the research to see the good that can come out there, and that a journey like yours could be possible. So in terms of questions people are asking right now, you mentioned that you lost your family when you made your journey away. Someone want to know if there was persecution for your choices. You dressed differently. You weren't allowed to see your family. Can you talk a little bit about where you are, in terms of your family today?
Yeah. So actually, that was another place that Makom helped me with. When I left my community, I stopped covering my hair because I was divorced and I was not married, and so my parents' rabbi said I cannot come into the house with my hair is not covered. I was not invited to my sister's wedding because my hair was not covered. And Allison had found somebody who is connected to the Hasidic community. I don't know, how would you describe him, Allison?
Oh, you're saying the posek that we asked? He's Haredi. He's not Hasidic. He's Haredi.
Not the posek, the mediator.
The Askan. Oh, the Askan. Got it. Right. So he's someone. He's Haimish. He has connections in the Hasidic world, and he's someone that knows people and can get things done. Basically, like he's a connected person.
Yeah. So Allison connected me to him, and he kind of worked between me and my family and my rabbi, and he kind of he really got into a very real discussions with my rabbi about the bigger picture here, about what's really going on, and how the hair covering is not the big deal that should be focused on right now, I think. Right. I mean, and so through that, we were able to reconcile that, and my family has since let me back into their homes and their lives. We don't have the closest relationship, but then again, I get to see my siblings. I think they at this point, they've heard me talk about this Judaism and different Jewish concepts in such a different light. And I think that they have a certain respect for me. I think they realize and recognize that I made different life choices, and I don't know that they would consider my house kosher, even though it is kosher, they know I keep Shabbat, but, they might have a lot of questions and trying to understand, the extent of my observance. They know I wear pants, but I keep Shabbat. So, that's something that, I know in my past life, I couldn't, even wrap my head around. If you wore pants, you're not religious at all. So, I'm sure they have a lot of confusion and questions. But at the same time, they've come to respect me, and we do have a connection.
So we have a question from Rachel. She wants to know, do Hasidic people who leave home feel there can be no middle ground? Why does it have to be all or nothing?
That's what we're taught. When I met Allison first, I remember one of the first questions or things that she wondered was well, why didn't you ever come to modern Orthodoxy? And for me, growing up, we were told that modern Orthodox people are the people who don't want to be frum, but they tell themselves they're frum by doing their pick and choose whatever they want to observe. So for me, when I left, it was I either live the Hasidic life or I live no Jewish life. I didn't know that this whole middle ground existed.
And also, I think what you weren't aware of is that there's, in terms of the shades of gray, that there can be people that are very halachic outside of the box that you were raised in. That there's more shades between Hasidic and modern. There's a bunch of, sort of gradations like that. I'm going to also answer this question because this is my show, so I could do that if I want to. I'm going to also say that feedback that we heard, we actually polled people that left observance completely. When we started Project Makom, sort of the beginnings of it in 2014, we did some market research, and we found out that actually several people had tried to stay. There were several people we spoke to who desired to remain observant to some degree, and they tried to fit into our communities, into other communities, and they didn't know how to. And that was literally where the word makom comes from, of space. We will make space for you. We will help you find your place. If you don't know how to navigate this, negotiate these different customs, or, you've missed certain, cultural things, we will help fill in the gaps for you and help you feel comfortable in a place. But I think, and I would say that's it's so important to tell these stories in a larger platform, stories like Nahum and so many others at Project Makom, so that people know that the choice is available. Because at the end of the day, none of us can tell any other person how to live their life other than like not breaking the law. Every person has bechira, has free will. They get to choose their own life when they're an adult, outside of breaking the law. When someone has been traumatized by Judaism, how can we possibly judge what choices they make? So should we say, oh, you have to try this out and see it can be good too? If the person was hurt so badly, we don't know that what was like if they're ready or ever ready to come back and give another try. But they should have the knowledge. They should have the knowledge that the best of both worlds could be possible. And I think the more that we can share this information, the more that
I jump in here, and just because I also think that like the question of like, well, you know, trying to understand where I came from, of like, didn't you know that there were other choices? Like, I think that like what you guys have and like the modern Orthodox Jewish community has is like, you're aware of the choices and we don't. And I feel that like just being aware of what's going on when we leave the community, how you can be helpful to us, is that like you have all this beautiful life that we don't know exists, and for you to just like open your world, you know, the way like Makom opens there, you open your homes and Makom families, just to show us that like life is not black and white. Judaism is not black and white. Like, we don't know that. That's something that like I learned just from being around other Makom families.
We're coming up to an hour. I told you I thought this would go for around an hour. This feels like a good amount of time to me, but in terms of sort of like closing message, could you give, there's people out there watching right now that could get involved with Makom as a host, as a volunteer, as a donor when things come down a little bit from coronavirus. And there's people on the participant side that are maybe either sort of wrote Judaism off and left completely. And there are some that may be living a double life and maybe miserable where they are. So I guess, could you speak to sort of both sides, the people that could get involved to help us grow as an organization and the people that could possibly use our services? Like, what are your messages for both of them in clothing?
For people who can like be donors and like hosts for Project Makom, like I want you to go away and realize what a tremendous work Makom does, and how like Makom is never, there's no other organization that does what Makom does. I think that like you're the first to do what you're doing and helping so many Jewish souls. I think so much of outreach is focused on like helping Jews who do not grow up religious at all, and there's this whole other, you know, us Jews who grew up with such a I don't want, you know, depressing kind of Judaism. And you can come and like save us, like literally save our lives. When I mean, I was suicidal when I left Judaism and my community. Like I was in the psych ward when I left. Like, I don't know where my life would have gone. I strongly believe that without Makom, like I wouldn't be where I am today. Like, and I feel that like you guys can be part of that. Like, if you want to donate, give Makom money so Makom can like keep doing its amazing work. If you can host and you can show other Jews who've had negative experience how beautiful Judaism can be, how we have choices, like give us that. Like, just open up your homes, open your communities, just show us what's out there. And for those of you who grew up the way I grew up and like want to stay connected to your Judaism, then know that there's this whole Judaism and there's this whole life that we were deprived from. And I you know, I love what Mandy Alex said at the Jew in the City All-Stars event. She said that like it's just like it's everyone's human birthright to have like running water and healthcare. She said it as a Jew, it's your human birthright to know your book. And I think she was talking about people who had absolutely no Jewish education whatsoever. But I think that's like so true for all of us who've been misguided with the Torah, who've been like abused through the Torah and put into like horrible situations. And it's our birthright. Like we don't like, that's our right. We should get to know it. And like, there are places where you can go, like come to Makom, learn about it. And you know, what you choose to do with it, Allison has never forced anyone to do anything at all. That's one of the things I love about her. she will just put it out for you. You can go and explore and find, just learn about it. And then whatever you decide to do, you can do. But I think you should learn about it. That's my advice. I'm like, it's out there. If you want it, come to us and we'll show you.
Amazing. Nechama, thank you so much for your time. Thank you. Yeah. We have an incredible staff that makes Project Makom run every day. We have our program director, Zeldy Treef. We have our director of operations, Amy Feinstein, Bed Madsen, who is our mental health voice in this whole system and does mail intake, Devorah Tuckman. We have so much more to do. It sometimes feels overwhelming how much we have not been able to share this story. And it sometimes feels overwhelming when we hear what people have gone through in the name of Judaism, and we know that it's not how it's supposed to be. Really, our dream, when we, God willing, one day get out of our houses and are allowed to leave, our dream is to try to go into the depths of the community with insiders to try to figure out how to help these issues that make Jewish life so painful for some people. We want Jewish life to be positive. And then for those that have experienced negativity, we want to give them a home. We want to give them a non-judgmental, unconditional, loving place to seek refuge in if they don't have a place where they started off. And then we want to tell those stories to the world. We want the world to know what's going on, but we also want to hold the media accountable to make sure to tell these stories with nuance, to not only repeat the negative stories, but also show all the beauty that exists, because so much beauty that does exist, and show different endings to this journey, because your ending, it's not over yet, but your journey has been so beautiful. It's been a pleasure to watch. Thank you all for watching tonight. You are our ambassadors. We can only do this with your support. Share what you learned. You can share this conversation on your social media. Talk about it, not in person because no one sees people anymore. And we will, God willing, do this some other time because this went pretty well, right? It went good?
Yeah, I enjoyed it, Allison. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, and be well, stay safe. I hope we'll be free soon. I hope we'll all be able to find a new Makom outside of our homes when it's healthy. Okay, thank you so much, guys. Okay.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.